This is why we continue to fight. Indigenous leaders outraged as Trans Mountain Pipeline spills 50,000 gallons of crude oil. Can we get somebody who is closer to / more knowledgeable of the situation that can provide a well-thought and nuanced opinion? Every time I read something regarding a pipeline or a spill, half the people commenting are outraged and claim we could have switched to 100% renewable energy by now, and the other half say it's not a big deal, we need jobs or something, and the story is just a political stunt. Before everyone gets all emotional and replies based on the clickbait. The spill occurred at the pump station, not along the pipeline itself, was self-contained and did no local damage. The system worked as designed. And yet I'm sure whenever this pipeline was built it was considered to be safe, had an environmental review, and the chances of a spill were said to be negligible. It's always this way. And yet the spill always happens. Trans mountains are mountains. If Alberta is to get its oil to market, pipeline is by far the safest and most efficient way, despite incidents like this one. The stance on whether to build pipelines is therefore a stance on whether Alberta is to keep producing oil. Despite the strong case for this province to diversify its economy and transition towards renewable energy, and the reason why I did not and will not vote for the UCP government, for the time being, oil production must continue and pipelines need to be built. First of all, petroleum isn't just used as a source of energy. Its byproducts are vital in many other industrial processes. Demand for petroleum products will remain for the foreseeable future. If Alberta halted its production, other suppliers like Russia and Saudi Arabia would easily cover the gap, resulting in economic losses in North America but ultimately no real reduction in global GHG emissions. If oil is still to be produced somewhere in the world, I would rather that as much of it as possible comes from Alberta, where production faces some of the most stringent environmental and labor laws in the world. No, it's not a scam, the audits are real and consultants on things like emissions are doing very well making sure companies are in compliance. Now, this doesn't mean that Alberta has no need to diversify. If anything, this province needs to mitigate the impact of commodity price volatility on its economy. However, the current government has done the exact opposite. Gutting higher education and advanced research funding, ending corporate tax breaks and benefits in unconventional fields simply to fund a massive tax cut to oil and gas is such a despicable move. Despite its promise to fight for the oil and gas industry, the government has really only babysat the mega companies while leaving the small and medium-sized businesses out to dry. The fate of this province is now more than ever firmly held in the hands of a handful of oil and gas companies, who have shown no hesitation to lay off hundreds to bolster their own stocks, despite taking billions in taxpayer dollars. Yet even if a transition was to happen, it certainly isn't now thanks to fucking UCP, it doesn't happen overnight. The reality is that the province's fortunes are still tied to oil and gas, and people's livelihoods depend on it, and not just those working directly in it. For example, restaurants have always been one of the worst hit whenever there's an oil downturn. So many other businesses have oil and gas as their customers. These people are people too. This has to be a better balancing act. First Nation rights need to be respected and their people need to be fairly compensated. Companies need to face harsher penalties for incidents like these, jail time on senior executives for more serious accidents, and they must be held accountable for cleanups and damages. Our courts are already combating attempts by some companies trying to leave their mess behind, but more can still be done. But a blanket opposition on all pipelines isn't constructive either, and as I am saying, companies need to be held more accountable. Our government is busy burying their noses in the company's ass with an unconstitutional, shameless, and ridiculous critical infrastructure bill. What a bunch of spineless worms. Any article that describes oil in gallons instead of barrels is trying to mislead. Being an engineer, I read this and immediately thought, wait a sec, this looks like a well-designed pump station. I bet everything was captured by the secondary containment and nothing harmful was released into the environment. Sure enough, if you Google for 5 minutes, you'll see that all the oil was properly contained and no environmental damage was done. The writer of this article was clever in leaving that fact out though. I almost thought it was an actual spill for a minute. I know I'm going to get downvoted for saying this, but the ecological impacts of this spill are negligible and it is simply being used for political gain. In my experience, most Aboriginals want these pipelines as they provide high-paying jobs that lift many members of the community out of poverty. Unfortunately, many Indigenous leaders hold their communities hostage based on their own outdated and false beliefs. Happened at a pump station where it was contained because they have measures in place. Also, pipelines are still the safest way to transport oil. If you don't like oil, then please, by all means, do your part, stop buying or using any products that come from oil. Deleted. This is one of those reports where the media changes the unit of measurement to entice a more emotional response. The standard unit of measurement in oil and gas for large quantities is BBL, barrels, or 42 gallons. This is a 1,190 BBL spill. 1,190 isn't as scary looking as 50,000. It's pretty small actually and easily cleaned up. For those curious, this is less than 2 train cars worth of oil. Spills always suck, even small ones have environmental impacts. But this is a pretty small spill all things considered and was actually contained by fail-safes at the pump house. That's like $50 of crude. Derailed trains of crude is way worse. For reference, this is about 1.5 train tanker cars of oil. FYI, a rail car holds 30,000 gallons of crude oil. Outraged over a small spill that was contained inside a pump station? Fearmonger journalism at its finest. There's been a lot of oil spills since global oil prices crashed. Is there some kind of oil spill insurance paying out just now? From what I understand, selling barrels of the stuff is worthless in today's market. Not to be that guy, but that's the equivalent of almost 5 trucks of oil. Not amazing, but not as bad as it could be. 1 mile of pipeline holds over 2x that amount, so this only leaked about 2k feet worth of oil, and that's under pressure. It is now illegal in the USA to fire mountain pipelines based on their trans status. The front fell off. I'm glad the pipeline is finally comfortable in its own body. But those gas prices though. 50,000 gallons equates to 1,190 barrels, or roughly 5 to 6 truckloads. Spill will be properly cleaned in a day. Yes, I used to do this for a living, and even if you left it, the grass would grow amazingly. Also, in Russia, there was an Exxon Valdez level spill of diesel gasoline. The permafrost that the tank containing it was built on, melted and gave way, roughly a week or 2 ago, though I haven't heard a peep about it. Well, the Gov is against all things trans, including mountains. This isn't a large amount of oil and should be an easy clean. 50,000 US gallons is about 1.5 times the amount 1.111 rail tank car can carry. WTF, stop with gallons, you are metric. Make it sound worse in liters to 189,250. No bonuses for them. It was their responsibility to contain this toxic substance. Fucking make them regret being so careless. Make them pay. Hey look, more clickbait garbage. The spill was contained safely at a pumping station, zero environmental damage. So they continue to fight for what reason? Pipelines are undoubtedly the best way to move these products.